Welcome to this week's edition of New York Now. I'm Casey Seiler, editor of the Times-Union, in for Dan Clark. Last summer, Albany became the first city in New York to pass good cause eviction legislation. A year later, that law has been overturned. Now, legislators in Albany are planning to appeal the state Supreme Court's decision. With good cause eviction legislation facing an uncertain future, tenant and landlord advocacy groups are wondering what's next. New York Now partnered with Times-Union reporter Steve Hughes for this report on the state of good cause eviction legislation in New York. Take a look.
In July 2021, Albany became the first city in New York to pass good cause eviction legislation. The law came at a time when a federal moratorium on evictions related to the COVID-19 pandemic was set to lapse.
The bill that we passed last July took into consideration tenants' concerns as well as landlords' concerns. And we really drafted a bill that was fair to protect good landlords as well as good tenants. I think the eviction moratorium was an emergency stop action by the state and by the country, but good cause eviction is beyond that. It goes beyond the pandemic. It goes to the constant day-to-day activity. It goes to the constant year after year protection of our neighborhoods and protection of our residents.
Albany's good cause eviction law wasn't intended to be a moratorium on evictions. It stated that landlords needed a good reason to evict tenants. Some justifications for eviction included non-payment of rent, criminal activity, or substantial damage to the property. The legislation also set a 5% cap on rent increases. Any increases greater than 5% would require justification. The legislation was a win for tenant rights organizations like United Tenants.
For the first time in the 49 years that United Tenants has existed, it was the first time that we were able to tell tenants, you can't be evicted for no reason. There has to be a reason that you're being evicted. There has to be a reason that your rent is getting hiked.
Advocates for the bill argued that landlords benefit when tenants are able to stay in an apartment long term. They suggested long-term tenants have a vested interest in the maintenance of a property, which raises property values over time, benefiting the owners.
If this law was able to sustain itself, it would give families the right to stay somewhere. It would give kids the right to go to the same school the whole time. It fights crime because you're not impoverishing families. Families aren't destitute looking for the next place to make a buck. It made a big impact.
But Albany's good cause eviction law was overturned in June 2022 by State Supreme Court Judge Christina Reba. Judge Reba's decision found that the city's law was in conflict with a pre-existing state law.
The impact of it being pushed back at the local level versus the state is that it now makes it so it puts a pause or freeze on the expansion of it in different municipalities. It also puts at risk all the other municipalities that have already passed it. So that's why now the emphasis is to have the state act and the state take the lead on this because we've done the hard work at the local level. We're not passing the buck. We did the work, we did what we were supposed to, and now the courts have said it should have been the state. So now we have to ask our state partners to work with us.
Those partners include landlords who oppose the original good cause eviction law. Opponents argue that good cause eviction legislation negatively impacts development and unduly limits the rights of landlords to manage their property.
Basically, there's two things that will happen if good cause passes as it sits today. The one thing it will do is it will stop landlords from being able to increase rents past a certain point when they desperately need to make upgrades to their properties, so they won't make the upgrades. And two, it's actually going to inhibit a resident from moving, because if they are not, how do I explain this? A resident's not going to move if they think their rents are going to go through the roof. So they're going to stay where they are, and it's going to create less inventory, which is never good.
The future of Albany's good cause eviction legislation continues to be in limbo. The city of Albany is appealing the state Supreme Court's decision, which leaves tenants in the capital region not knowing what's next.
So yeah, a lot of tenants are concerned after they began organizing on the back of good cause and essentially trying to enforce good cause outside of the courts through community development. Now they're saying, well, wait, are we protected still? Like, is this worth it? I would say it's even more worth it. And that's why they're still organizing and trying to enforce it, even though the courts have said you can't have it right now.
We want to look for solutions that keep people in homes, and we want to look for ways to protect the residents that are following all the rules and paying their rent on time and not being disruptive. So in turn, we hope that that helps build vibrant communities and a place where other people want to live and attract more people to New York.
That the social benefit just never gets talked about because it's always like, this is what the bill is and this is how the landlords feel about it, and rarely do we get tenant voices. So I think just beyond like your kids getting to go to the same school and being closer friends with your neighbors, you get to actually develop your immediate local community, and there's a symbiosis in the community as a result of being able to stay where you live.
When we sit in a room sometimes together, we find out that there's more that brings us together than brings us apart. And I think we did that in the city of Albany. I think nobody got everything that they wanted. I got angry phone calls from both sides of this issue, but I think we did something that was fair and we did something that was good for our residents and our property owners. I hope we can get this protection back for our residents, because a lot of our residents for the last year felt that they had additional protections that they don't have now, and eviction rates are going through the roof, and to not have those protections for so many of our residents is very worrisome, and I'm hoping we can get that back. I hope the state acts quickly to get those protections back for our neighbors.